This is Alice Madness Returns, and it has a bit of an identity crisis. However, that's one of the biggest reasons why you should buy it. Developed by Spicy Horse and published by EA, Alice Madness Returns is a sequel to the 2000 game American McGee's Alice. The story of Alice Madness Returns is somewhat only glossed over. In the beginning of the game, we catch up with Alice, who has been a bit busy dealing with some rather terrifying psychotic episodes. Of course, she's going at it alone because her psychiatrist seems to just tell her, "Oh, it's nothing, just forget about it. Oh, it's nothing, definitely not disturbing at all." So that's terrible. And then there's this lady, a nurse who has some sort of dirt on Alice and uses it to blackmail her for money. That's disheartening enough, but the creatures of Wonderland aren't exactly any more helpful. The game sheds more light on its vague backstory by collecting memories. Each one gives you a small sentence or two relating to the events prior to the game, and more everything gets pieced together as you progress through the adventure. The gameplay in Alice Madness Returns is heavily focused on combat and platforming. There's only a small handful of weapons throughout the game, but it never feels like too little. Your health is represented by these rose petals in the top left corner of the screen. When I first played the game, I was like, oh, okay, it's kind of like Zelda. When you get hit, you lose half a heart or so, and I have enough heart. This is totally fine. But once you've been playing for a while, you'll find out just how fast that can drain. Since everything is based around combat, you'd expect a wide variety of weapons and moves, but such is not the case here. There's only 5 weapons in the game, along with a couple of other things to help you along, which is entirely different, and each one has different uses. You've got the Vorpal Blade, which in this game is not a sword, is just a big kitchen knife. You've got the Pepper Grinder, which serves as a Gatling gun, the Hobby Horse, which is basically a sledgehammer, the Teapot, which is a grenade launcher, the Clockwork Bomb, which is basically a device for distracting enemies, and the Umbrella, which acts as a shield. Throughout the game, you collect teeth from jars and enemies, and you use them to upgrade your weapons so that they're even more effective, do more damage, things like that. When you start out, the game gives you enemies to just wail on with the Vorpal Blade, and it feels really satisfying to clobber them and cut them down. However, a little bit later on, you're introduced to these guys. I like to call them T-Goblins. So sometimes the T-Goblins have forks and shields, which your knife doesn't break through, so you have to wait for them to try and attack you before you teleport out of the way. Also, you can teleport out of the way, no big deal. This is the game's method of teaching you, hey man, this isn't a button masher, sometimes you gotta think fast, strategize, move around, find a different angle. And that's good. But here's the problem. This game studies what I like to call the Dead Space 2 school of difficulty. And what I mean by this is in Dead Space 2, towards the end of the game, their idea of difficulty is just to throw as much stuff at you as possible. It's incredibly infuriating because you're trying to attack certain enemies and then 5 more come up and they're like, hey dude, what's up, wanna play? Guys, there's not enough flamethrower to go around. It's the same thing here. Rather than designing tougher enemies, they simply put a whole bunch of them all in the same area. And that's just lazy design. Here's a great example. This area here has a Goliath that shoots and charges at you. Also, you have these beehives that generate an infinite amount of bugs that latch onto you and impede your movement. You have more of the black gooey baby creatures and these walking teapot spiders that launch hot tea at you. Then these black thingies and tea spiders constantly respawn until you beat the Goliath. You see the problem here? The difficulty comes from dividing your attention amongst all these different things that demand it. That's difficult, but in a rather cheap, lazy way, and when you finally beat the challenge, it doesn't even feel satisfying. But they built in a failsafe for this. Hysteria mode. It's a sort of emergency steroid shot. When you're about to die, you can become supercharged and just lay waste to the enemies that were tormenting you, which is satisfying beyond compare. I will say this though. When the game isn't getting cheap with its enemy placement, the combat feels awesome. You feel like a ninja all teleporting around the battlefield, take a couple slashes, peppering a couple shots, and then teleport somewhere else. Sure, when you look at it subjectively, it's not that complicated. Hit, shoot, teleport, repeat, but when you're actually doing it, it's different. The teleporter mechanic keeps the combat fast-paced and fun. Even though the game focuses heavily on combat, there is some exploration to be had. Alice has the ability to shrink down to about a third of her normal height for the purpose of exploring and revealing hidden hints. There's also these flying pig snouts that you can shoot with the Pepper Grinder, and they'll reveal certain paths and collectibles to you. Sometimes they are legitimately tough to find. Here's the other thing about the pig snouts, they make a little snort noise when you're close, and that sound entices you. It makes you want to find the pig snout because it's taunting you with the promise of hidden treasures. Also, you can get kind of annoyed with it because it's, just like in your ears. The platforming design seems kind of vanilla, but there's nothing really wrong with that. Everything looks really awesome, but when you strip away the cool art assets, it's just generic 3D platforming. Jump to platform number 1. Oh, this one goes up and down. Ride the air currents. Glide to the next platform. Blah, blah, blah. But it's never so hard that it feels tedious. It just feels like taking a walk to the next interesting thing. All the while, the game's interesting visuals just keep you in awe. Alright, so after that whole spiel, I'm going to talk about the art design. Holy crap, it's fantastic. That doesn't necessarily mean that I like all of it. However, I will give credit where credit is due. This is a very creatively designed and well done game. Towards the beginning, you're in this town where literally everything is beige and brown. Gross, ugly, bland, meh. But when you finally go to Wonderland, this is what you're waiting for. Colorful, childlike, nice. If you grew up with the Disney movie, then you'll feel right at home here. However, you'll quickly be like, oh, okay. So that's how it's gonna be. And this comes as no surprise because the opening cutscene of the game has visuals like this. Holy freaking crap, this definitely deserves an M rating. Ugh. It's absolutely littered with disturbing visuals and strange designs. It honestly feels like a dream that became a nightmare, which is perfect because that's the whole theme. Tons of recognizable characters are now unreal and weird and just flat out disgusting sometimes. Look at the Mad Hatter. Oh, what is that? Kill it with fire. It's a nasty mutilated flesh doll with gears and metal joints and stuff in it. It's just gross to look at. Even though it's kind of disturbing to me, that's the whole point. This game is a dive into the disturbed mind of Alice, and in that endeavor it succeeds wonderfully, creating a surreal world that feels polluted and sick. And that is the reason why you want to keep going. It's laid out really early that Alice is confronting her inner demons here, and that while her Wonderland is destroyed, that's the end goal, is to restore it to the beautiful place it used to be. It's a creative allegory for how the real world can take something pure, innocent, and nice and completely destroy it. In that way, I suppose it conveys a rather painful truth that no one wants to acknowledge in depth. So my final analysis? It's a great platforming game with deep combat mechanics and a story and premise that will make you ponder your life. Thanks for watching, everyone, and I hope you enjoyed it. Click these links for more game reviews, let's plays, and music videos. Bye-bye.